Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to demystify one of the most fundamental tools in web automation, Selenium locators. If you've ever wanted to make a web browser do things all on its own, well, this is exactly where you start.
I mean, think about it. When you're on a website, you just know where to click. But how do you explain that to a robot? How do you tell your script, hey, click that specific button, or go type in that search box over there? That's the puzzle we're solving today. And it turns out all of web automation really just boils down to this super simple two-step process. First, you got to find the thing you want to mess with, the element. Then second, you do something to it, like click it or type in it. That's it. For this explainer, we're going all in on that crucial first step, locating the element. So, what even is a locator? Honestly, the best way to think about it is like an address. Just like you punch a street address into your GPS to find a specific house, a locator gives your script the exact coordinates for a button, a link, or a text box on the huge, sprawling map of a web page. Okay, so here's our game plan. We'll kick things off with the main challenge in automation. Then we'll break down locators into two main families. After that, we'll get into the basic toolkit you're going to use constantly, then dive deep into finding one thing versus finding a bunch of things. And we'll wrap up by answering, why on earth are there so many of these things?
All right, let's get into it. The number one challenge, the absolute foundation of all of this, is finding an element uniquely. See, if a page has 3 buttons that all say Submit, you need a rock-solid way to tell your script exactly which one to press. Getting this right is, well, it's everything. Now, to make sense of all our options, it's really, really helpful to sort locators into 2 big families. Once you see it this way, the whole landscape becomes way easier to understand. So on one side, you've got your basic locators. Think of these as the off-the-shelf addresses you can just find sitting right there in the page's HTML, like an element's ID or its name. But on the other side, you have customized locators, like XPath and CSS selectors. These are what you use when you have to build your own custom directions because a simple address just isn't there. For today, we're going to stick with the essential basic locator toolkit. All right, time to open up that toolkit. These are your go-to tools, the ones you'll reach for day in and day out. They're probably going to solve like 80% of the problems you run into. So let's do a quick-fire round through the 6 essential locators in our basic toolkit. Knowing what each one is for and why you'd pick one over the other, that's the whole ballgame. First up is ID. And let me tell you, when an element has an ID, it is your absolute best friend. Why? Because an ID is supposed to be totally unique on the entire page. It's like a social security number for that element. There should only be one. So if you see one, that's almost always your best bet. It's fast and it's reliable. Next, we have name. It's a lot like ID, and it's also great for finding unique things. You'll see this one all the time inside web forms, on things like the search bar on Google or the username and password fields on a login screen. It's another super reliable choice, especially if you're automating filling out forms. Okay, now these next 2 are specialists. They have one job and one job only, finding those clickable hyperlinks. So imagine a link that says, click here for more details. If you use the link text locator, you have to match that phrase perfectly. But with partial link text, you could just search for more details, or even just click here. It gives you a lot more flexibility. And that brings us to class name and tag name. Now here's what's so cool about these 2. While all the others are fantastic for finding one specific thing, these guys are champions at finding groups of similar elements. Think about finding all the product images on an Amazon page, or every single headline on a news site. And you know what? This idea of finding one versus many, it's so important that it needs its own section. Which leads us right here to a concept that trips up so many people when they're starting out. It's the difference between the commands find element and find elements. I know, it looks like a tiny difference, just one little S, but understanding how these 2 behave is absolutely critical for writing good automation. So you might be wondering, why would I even want to find a group of things? Well, the source material gives a perfect real-world example. Imagine your job is to test a web page and make sure it has, say, more than 50 links on it. You're not going to find them one by one. You need to grab all of them at once so you can just get a count. And boom, here's exactly what that looks like. By using the tag name locator for a link, which is just A, and the find elements command, the script could instantly grab and count every single link on the page, all 76 of them, in one go. Okay, this slide right here is the big aha moment. So let's walk through this because it's super important. All right, scenario 1, your locator matches just one thing. Find element gives you that one thing back, and find elements gives you a list with that one thing inside it. Simple enough? Now scenario 2. Your locator matches a bunch of elements, and here is the huge difference. Find element will only ever give you the very first one it finds, and then it stops. But find elements, it gives you a list with all of them. And finally, scenario 3, probably the most important for writing scripts that don't crash. Your locator finds nothing. Find element will immediately stop your entire script and throw a big no such element exception error. But find elements is way more chill. It'll just return an empty list. And that simple difference is what lets you check if something exists without blowing up your whole program.
So all of this leads to a pretty logical question, right? If the goal is just to find something on a page, why do we have so many different ways to do it? Why not just pick one or two and call it a day? And the answer is pretty simple. Modern websites are alive. They're not static documents. They are incredibly dynamic. An ID for a button that works perfectly right now might be totally different the next time you refresh the page, which means your script would just instantly fail. So the whole point, the big takeaway, is that this variety gives you flexibility. It gives you a toolkit. Your goal is always, always to find a locator that is both unique and stable, something that isn't going to change. So if that ID is dynamic, you pivot. You try a stable class name instead. If nothing basic works, that's when you roll up your sleeves and build a custom CSS selector. Having these options is what makes your automation tough and reliable. Which leaves us with one final, really important question to chew on. Let's say you're looking at a button, and you realize that its ID, its name, and its class name could all be used to find it. So, which one should you choose? Answering that question? Well, that's where the real art and strategy of automation comes in.